Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. SoupX, the Startup Expo, North America's premier startup conference, is March 6th and 7th, 2017, in sunny Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Affordably priced, SoupX is a 2-day international conference featuring workshops, panels, speeches, a $50,000 startup competition, and over 100 exhibitors. For more information, go to sup-x.org. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Lora Ivanova. She's the co-founder, CMO at myLAB Box. Lora, welcome to the show.
Hi, Kevin. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you're doing is really important, and you're actually making a difference in the world, which I think a lot of startups don't necessarily do. But maybe before we get into what exactly myLAB Box is, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Absolutely. Well, I was born and raised in Bulgaria. So I have a European background. I was a pretty adventurous child, so I started traveling around the age of 18, 19, and then ended up being here in the U.S. At Washington University in St. Louis. I got a full scholarship, which made me, travel across the ocean to start a new life here in the United States, and I've been here ever since. So it's really exciting for me to be in a place in my life where I am ultimately, in a way, living the American dream by having my own business and starting my own company and making a difference, I feel, in the community. So it's just been a whirlwind of a few years for me personally, and I just couldn't be happier with myLAB Box and the changes that we were able to bring about in the healthcare industry here in the U.S.
Sure. I think that's great. So was your plan to come to America, or how did you decide to go to St. Louis for university?
To be honest, I wasn't planning to come to the U.S. Once I graduated from high school, I applied to schools all over the world, including Bulgaria. And one thing led to the next. I ended up receiving a full scholarship, merit scholarship at Washington University in St. Louis. They were very keen on attracting me to their university, and I decided to take a chance. It was a bit of a leap of faith, and to be honest, I was concerned. I didn't want to go. By the time I had to leave, it was a big change. But I did feel at one point, and really the thing that pushed me forward was the sense that I didn't want to live with any regrets. I didn't want to miss out on an opportunity to experience something new. And the way I felt, home will always be there. You can always return. Your parents
That's great.
will welcome you back. And at the time in my life, it was just really important to take a chance and see what I'm made of.
Had you been to St. Louis before you decided to go to university there?
Not at all. I actually, and that's a funny story, that I actually thought that Washington University in St. Louis is in Washington. So actually Washington, D.C. So I did buy a ticket to D.C. I landed, and I thought St. Louis must be a suburb of D.C. just because it made no sense to me. Usually in Europe, things that are like, if it's the London School of Economics, it would be in London, or anything else. Right. It wouldn't be anywhere else. So it was a bit of an adventure, even just getting to St. Louis. And it's a very unique setting here in the U.S., definitely kind of that gateway to the West. So I'm very fortunate, I think, that the school ended up being in that location. It taught me a lot about the U.S. as a country and culture. But yeah, I definitely did not plan on being there. So life sometimes takes its turn.
Sure. No, that's great. I love that. So you get out of university. What did you end up doing?
I actually kind of did a bit of a Frankenstein academic program. I initially, part of my kind of hope for coming to the U.S. really was the ability to have multiple majors.
Okay.
I had enrolled in a program prior to leaving the country back in London and in Sofia. One of them is a theater school. The other one was a business school. I really wanted to study both theater and business. And at home, it wasn't really possible to double major. The universities are not set up in a way that allows you to do that. Usually you have to, at least at the time they were not, you had to basically select a field of study and then just pursue that through your academic career. When I decided to come to the US, my hope was that I could kind of pull those two degrees together and ultimately transfer both of them at WashU. That ended up being a little bit more complicated than I thought. So I actually ended up graduating in 5 years from 3 different universities in 3 different countries, and I have a business degree, a theater degree, and a film minor. So I ended up with a very interesting
That's awesome.
List of degrees, but it's really exciting. I mean, I think I just made it work. I think I probably was taking about 21, 24 credits at WashU alone. I was also remotely completing my business degree through a program in London. It's called Thames Valley University in London. And as an honorary, I received a degree from a Bulgarian university that was facilitating my business degree because I received the highest grade on my thesis for my business school.
That's awesome. Congrats.
So
that's amazing.
me. Yeah, it was very, very, I mean, it was a great honor. So now when people ask me, do you want to go back and get an MBA or another degree? I just kind of laugh. No, absolutely not.
You're done.
I think I'm done with that part of my life. I'd rather focus on my career and my business.
Fair enough. So you've kind of worked a bunch of jobs, but walk me through kind of how did myLAB Box come to be a reality, and who came up with the idea behind it?
Absolutely. Well, I think my kind of career trajectory revolved around technology, specifically e-commerce, web applications, as well as kind of marketing and PR. So those things kind of stayed consistent in my professional development, the ability to kind of understand business and how business works, be very tech savvy, as well as really have a creative eye when it comes to engaging audiences, e-commerce products, and just developing new solutions and platforms. I had a fairly successful corporate career that after a while I found to be really unfulfilling. I got to a point in my life where, following kind of a fairly serious car accident, I really had to ask myself some even more serious questions about where I was going with my life personally. What was I dedicating my energy? And frankly, if my life was to end tomorrow, how proud would I feel with what I had accomplished? And I think at the time, really, the biggest takeaway for me was that I wanted what I do day in and day out, what I wake up for, what I get in the car for, and ultimately dedicate the best years of my life to make a difference. So I started looking for different kind of companies and ideas initially to consult for. I did that for about a couple of years and found myself in a place where I really felt that to really get to the point where I'm contributing at my best, I needed to start my own business and really kind of get behind ideas that are bigger than what I could find out there, ideas that I really felt were much needed and were not in existence yet. So myLAB Box came during that search. I was having coffee with one of my good girlfriends, Ursula Hestenflow, who is currently my co-founder and CEO of myLAB Box. We were catching up on life, and we were just talking about, living and dating in Los Angeles and how that really, the craziness of it, the humor of it, the strange interactions that we sometimes have, as well as some horror stories that some of our friends had shared around that same experience. And one theme kind of came up during our conversation, which was really the discomfort and awkwardness of taking dating to the next level, specifically when it comes to intimate relations, and sometimes people rush into it, how little information we often have before we decide to engage with a new partner in that way, and how really when it comes to our sexual health, there seems to be this kind of massive disconnect between what we knew we should do as adults and responsible adults at that, and what really we were able to do given the busyness of our lives, the access to resources, and everything else. Personally, growing up in Europe, I was part of that, brought up during the kind of peak, if you will, of the HIV awareness campaigns. I mean, really the 80s and the 90s saw a huge kind of spend and time and energy and effort into raising awareness around HIV and the risks of HIV and the importance of having annual STD screenings and screening between each partner, protection, et cetera. Coming to the US, I found that there really wasn't such an emphasis. Most cases than not, people treated STD testing as something that was, yeah, I know I should be doing it, but, I'm fine. I don't see anything. And I feel good, and
Sure.
As we all know, this is really not, about 80% of infections are asymptomatic. And we all know that this is really not a measure of being safe or being okay, but many people seem to kind of ignore that issue. And what really kind of, as we were kind of talking about this issue, and jokingly so at first and then more serious later, we both walked away kind of really curious, because what came up in our conversation was the fact that testing was so uncomfortable and inconvenient and inaccessible made something that should ultimately be a easy health routine into kind of a point of nuisance and something that in a point of avoidance.
Sure.
And we felt that if 2000 at the time 13, in 2013, as an advanced society, we felt there should be something that's easier out there.
Sure.
So we walked away from our conversation, and when we reconnected a few days later, it turned out we had both kind of researched the subject. We had kind of gone online, looked for STD testing options, looked for kind of what technology existed to solve this and address this issue. And in that process, not only we didn't find any solutions, but also we came across some really disturbing statistics, specifically in the United States, the fact that 1/3 of our population today, and this is 110 million US adults, are currently living with an STI. Okay. Many of them don't know it. And are kind of living day by day. It is a mass epidemic. If we're looking at as big as epidemics go, I think something that impacts 1/3 of our population should really create some urgency around coming up with some measures. Whether because it's a taboo or anything else, this hasn't happened. And we've kind of continued to exist in this, we'll keep doing what we've always done. It's not working, but the change seems to just not be something that organizations had been spending a lot of effort or energy in. So our next step really was, we wondered how difficult it would be to come up with a way to test from home. I think really the major takeaway for us, and initially kind of the thinking was, well, is it the conversations we should be facilitating? Should we be helping people, ask each other for those test results and share their results in order to encourage them to test more? And kind of my gut feeling initially really was that, if we made testing easier, that really takes care of everything else. If it's easier, more people would do it. If more people are doing it, more people would share it. If more people shared it, more people would ask for it. And it just kind of seems to be the key that unlocked potentially this entire puzzle. So we started looking at what it would take. And as marketers, what really excited us about the opportunity is that the technology was there. So once we started putting the pieces together from the health perspective, we were able to do that. We didn't have to invent a new way to test or a new chemical process or anything else. We were able to really piece together a very unique process of testing with some existing technology pieces and some online innovation. What really is exciting to us is that once that was done, it all really becomes a matter of educating a public. So as marketers, that's really what we do. What we focus on is changing behaviors, educating, and getting people to make hopefully better and more proactive choices. So that was kind of the evolution, if you will, of myLAB Box. And since that moment, we've really been working on figuring out how to make the testing, whether that is for STDs or for any other health condition, as easy and intuitive as possible, how to put results in the hands of the user as fast as possible, and how to get them access to the resources, whether that is at-home physician consultations or expert consultations, as fast as possible and free of charge. So today we're happy to actually not only offer testing via the myLAB Box platform, but also be the first and only service that allows you to receive free over-the-phone consultations with physicians in every state if you ever test positive using our service. So test to treatment, we've integrated the entire gamut, and we've made maintaining your sexual health really a no-brainer.
Sure. No, I think that's awesome. And I think it's super important. I think like anything that's people are kind of a little bit embarrassed to be seen at certain places, right? And being able to make something that you just order and it shows up, whether it's doesn't really matter what it's for, I think is awesome because a lot more people are willing to do it, right? And go through it and actually figure out if there's something wrong. And it doesn't really matter what the industry is, right? It could be anything, right? And I think I love the fact that you guys are doing that, and you're educating people, and you're basically making things that are traditionally uncomfortable for people a lot less uncomfortable because it's just done privately.
Absolutely. And I think, the consumers over the last over a decade now, they've spoken loud and clear. If you look at what happened to brick and mortar services, to any kind of on-demand delivery subscription type services, and some of the successes several companies in that area and industry have experienced, it really comes from the need of people in this life that gets busier and more hectic every day to have a simplified, easy shopping solution that ultimately automates a lot of their needs, that takes care of the inconvenience for them. And when it comes to something as intimate as your health, having something that also gives you that sense of peace of mind and privacy that we all oftentimes kind of have gotten used to either setting aside or sacrificing just because there haven't been other alternatives. Look at, and I always laugh, how many times has the electric or just even the razor been reinvented? How many times has the toothbrush been reinvented? Now I almost feel like they talk to you. They might as well integrate Siri into your shaving devices, But it's at the same time, when it comes to other parts of your hygiene, there hasn't been that kind of reiteration and innovation, and there should have been. So that's what we've done. We've really taken the sexual hygiene and your intimate hygiene, we've reinvented that. And the other example I always laugh about and I give is if you look at maintaining your health, anything that has to do with your health that needs to be done on a routine basis. Let's say brushing your teeth, right?
Sure.
How many times would you brush your teeth if you had to go to the dentist every single time you had to do that?
Sure.
The answer is probably not so often. So by bringing some of our healthcare home, I think really, especially when it comes to prophylactic care and parts of our healthcare that need ongoing maintenance and monitoring, bringing it home really is the only way to do it. Getting it on the go at home, making it as easy and accessible as possible, so we can empower the individual and also give the physicians kind of more bandwidth to really focus on what counts really, which is treating patients.
Sure. So obviously you gave an overview of what you guys are doing, but I'm curious to know, okay, so I go to mylabbox.com, I order it, shows up at my house, I follow the instructions, I obviously ship it back to you guys, and then within a few days I get results online, or somebody call me. How does that work?
We've really simplified at-home testing to 3 main steps. So you order the test online and it arrives at your doorstep in a discrete package. Nobody will know there's nothing else other than potentially your next Amazon order.
Sure.
Once you open the box, it takes you literally 5 minutes to complete the test. You collect a small sample that you mail back to our laboratory for testing. And we've timed that, not just ourselves, but also people that obviously are seeing the box for the first time. And it literally takes 5 minutes. We actually haven't had a single test user that exceeded that amount. Okay. Once we receive your sample, it takes about 24 hours to maybe up to 5 days to process your results and make them available for you to review them online in your secure account. So you literally are looking at potentially 3 to 8 days total turnaround from the moment that you press buy to the moment that you actually know your results. And that's it. Simple as 1, 2, 3. Buy it online, do it at home, and get your results online.
Gotcha.
These are lab certified results. They're completely diagnostic, and they are actually something that you can either bring to your own physician, or again, if you test positive, we have completely complimentary and free physician consultations that you can do over the phone with physicians in your state that will allow you to get treatment and prescription and be on your way to a safer life and better health right away.
Got you. And so, just if I remember correctly, when we talked before, neither one of you really have a healthcare kind of medical background, correct?
Correct. We do have team members on board that have very deep knowledge and experience in the STD sector as well as health sector. But personally, my co-founder and I, we come from marketing and online background. So
Sure.
We understand technology of delivering services to consumers, and we've brought the expertise on board to really deliver kind of the next generation of health quality and services as we've built the company.
See, I love that you guys are building a product in a space that you don't really have necessarily a background in. And I think it's super important to mention that is because I love that you have like almost like an outside perspective, right? And I've done just over my career projects and stuff in the healthcare space, kind of on the software side. And I think it's interesting to me that I think you guys are an inspiring story to say, like, look, you saw a problem, you figured out how to do it, and you weren't necessarily in that space before you decided to solve that problem, I guess is the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, no, and I absolutely agree with you. In fact, I think that a huge part of the reason why we've been so successful and innovative has been the fact that we don't come from a health background. So we're not burdened
Agreed.
by kind of the history of successes or failures in the kind of development of STD testing protocols or anything else. We really come from it from the perspective of the end user, as individuals who, have either needed to use that service at some point in their life, who know people who need to use that service. What does that end user need? And we really are building the company around what the individual needs in terms of their healthcare, rather than what kind of some of the hiccups or the barriers have become over time. We initially kind of faced a lot of questions and opposition, a lot of kind of pushback from some of the medical community that we reached out to, in terms of, well, yes, but that's not how it's done. Yes, it's feasible, but that's not how it's been done historically. Yes, but what happens to follow-ups? Yes, but what happens to the results, and how do people know that they are ultimately meeting regulatory practices? And what turned out is, over time, we found those medical experts that really saw the bigger pictures, understood the urgency and the need to reinvent this process. And we were able to really demonstrate, for now being 3 years in the business and being the only and first nationwide service to offer at-home STD testing, the fact that it works just as well, results are just as accurate, the follow-up protocols don't need to change, people are still given access to treatment and healthcare, and even more so than they would if they were driving to a clinic. We actually are able to offer them that service at home and expedite their ability to be on the way from testing to treatment, and cut that by almost a month. So it makes a huge difference, and it's great to see kind of the tides turn and see the medical community embrace what we're doing and learn to kind of celebrate it, and as well as seeing other models in the marketplace that are entering, that are looking into ways to take this to the next level, whether that is with different testing models or anything else. But it's been really exciting to see since we kind of established and set this footing in the ground, how many other and different companies have come to the market and really are trying to play in the same space and encourage users to bring their testing home. So
Sure.
if anything, I see this as a huge, very reassuring trend that just shows that we're on the right track, but we also entered the market in the right place, at which point both the community of users and ultimately health experts are ready to move forward and make a change.
Sure. No, I think that's great. And so are you guys looking at into doing other kind of home tests in other areas, or is that kind of maybe down the road? It's too early, or where are you kind of on that?
Well, I think in terms of myLAB box, the next step for us really is to expand our STD serving tests. So really getting to a point where we are covering the full gamut.
Okay.
We are on the verge of announcing a full panel of tests this November. Okay. Which is very exciting to us. This would include not only things like syphilis and hepatitis C and additional STDs from the ones that we offer at this time, but also very widely spread new infections such as HPV and mycoplasma, ureaplasma. So we're looking at really building out the sexual health sector first, doing what we do well and doing it even better. So currently our testing, and initially we really focused on the most common infections as a way to really give you the best peace of mind and attack really where the largest growth in infections has been in recent years. Having the ability to launch the full panel of tests by the end of this month is really exciting to us because ultimately we think it's important to be as thorough as possible. We were the first ones to launch online extragenital testing options, which basically means screening for infections that appear in the mouth and rectal area. So this allows us to detect as many as 20% more infections that may begin localized than any conventional testing method. So this really is kind of fitting the vision for being as comprehensive as possible in providing the best at-home sexual health care. And as a next step, I think, the sky is the limit. I have always thought that laboratory testing should move at home. So part of the reason why we started with STDs is obviously the huge need, but we've always believed that ultimately anything and everything that a user can test for at home should be made available to them. So I don't necessarily, by any means, I don't exclude a future in which we become the Amazon of at-home STD testing and at-home laboratory testing in general. I do think that there's a huge opening and that there's a lot of need. We see people every day download new apps and try to find answers to questions like, am I intolerant to certain foods? Why can't I sleep? People have become much more open to getting information about their genetics and their ancestry by completing tests at home. So we just see this as part of the natural evolution of bringing laboratory testing to the next level and making it as accessible to as many users as possible, not only in the US, but also worldwide.
Sure. No, I think that's great. So I'm curious then, did you guys self-fund at the beginning of this, or did you guys raise some money, or how did you kind of fund the early versions of this?
We did everything and anything that really it took to keep the company going forward. Our first year was by and large self-funded, so we bootstrapped it. We put some of our life savings into this, and it really was, it's been a challenging time because as an entrepreneur, you never know if what you're sacrificing for ultimately will result in anything. It will live beyond your savings account. So we did bootstrap at the beginning, which I think actually taught us to be very creative with our resources and really make our budget go a long way, not only in terms of marketing efforts, but also development efforts and company operations. We then did a small friends and family round that allowed us to kind of continue to move forward. We raised about $500,000 at the beginning of this year, and we're currently preparing for our next round of funding. So it's just really exciting to see how something that ultimately began or was started by two people and kind of a bold dream inspire so many people, and we couldn't be happier to have a investor that have joined us because we took a little bit of extra time. We didn't want to start looking for money right away because we wanted to make sure that the people we attract and anybody who invests in this company is ultimately people that can bring value, people that bring expertise and allow us to take this to the next level. We weren't just looking for a get-rich scheme or a way to, get a few millions of dollars in investment dollars that we would just then, blow up and disappear in a year. We really have been building this company in a way that it can be sustainable and self-sustainable and grow, and are looking at investment as a really strategic cash that we can leverage to improve the service much faster and more dramatically than we would if we just continue the way we have been.
Sure. No, that's great. So I'm curious, how did you meet your co-founder?
Oh, goodness. I called her many years back in a previous life. I was doing technology resources, staffing, and consulting. So I was working for one of the largest IT staffing firms in the country, and we were expanding our client footprint. And I reached out, ended up having a nice conversation on the phone, met up, and then just continued to run into each other throughout several years, whether at different events or even friends parties. And finally, we just laughed one day. We're like, we should probably be friends. We keep running into each other all over town. So we became friends. And, several years later, we were having that historic coffee where we decided to kind of look into this crazy idea about home STD testing. And there we are.
That's great. I'm always curious to know how kind of people found their co-founder. And I think it always seems a little bit kind of almost sporadic, or it just seems to kind of happen, right? It's interesting to me anyway. So I'm curious then to know, where do you guys kind of, I guess, I don't know how to phrase this. How are you guys looking? Well, I guess, what's the reaction been? Like, it's got to be pretty positive for the most part, but you have to get some kind of backlash a little bit, or has it been mainly positive towards kind of the whole idea of moving this stuff kind of more at home, kind of just curious?
Sure. Well, I think in terms of a reaction, it's been by and all very positive.
Okay.
When it comes to kind of the end users and the customers, people that sign up online and use our service, we have received tremendous positive support from the entire community. The initial kind of pushback from some of the health experts that we spoke with quickly dissipated once we were able to really show the data and the track record of having operated in the space for a while, and really being able to demonstrate kind of the same accuracy of test results as those that users may get in a clinic. Once we integrated the kind of expertise and at-home consultation components, it really, I think, reassured by and large the experts in the field that we are building something to last, and we are building it in a way that not only offers convenience to the user, but ultimately meets all of the regulatory standards and even surpasses them in some cases. So that has become really, by and large, a very positive response as well, including we also have on board Dr. Gary Richwald, who used to head up the LA County's Department of Health STD branch. And this is the largest Department of Health STD branch in the U.S. Here in the Los Angeles area. So he is one of our C-level executive team. And it's just validates again the fact that what we are providing and offering is backed up by very solid medical expertise in this space. We have some interesting encounters during our fundraising efforts, and we sometimes have some funny encounters during our marketing efforts. And I think largely, sometimes by ignorance,
Sure.
by the way people's kind of perceptions are. But I mean, early stages, before we had a lot of traction, when this was just kind of an idea and nobody else had even dreamt of doing, we had some kind of inappropriate questions asked by potential investors, especially, being two women and being in a kind of a sexual health space. There was a lot of presumptions about who we are and our lifestyles that were completely wrong, but nevertheless something we had to learn to deal with. And if anything, to me, it demonstrated kind of some of the stigma that we would have to combat in order to really get the point across of why this service is something that applies to everybody. A lot of ignorance as well. I mean, people would ask us, well, this is, I'm too old for this. This is just for teenagers. This is just for gay people. This is just for at-risk users. And it really, having a lot of these conversations, educating over time, the fact that everybody's at risk as long as they're having sex, and that STDs don't pick you based on the color of your skin or your sexual orientation or the zip code of where you live. And it really, I think with the number of users growing, we've been able to pretty much eliminate a lot of that kind of awkward interactions that we saw at the beginning. From a marketing perspective, we've had a little bit of a challenge with some platforms like, for example, YouTube or Google search, with regards to advertising products that are in the sexual health space, because they are associated with sex. So we've actually had, ads being blocked. I think our Twitter account is not able to advertise because it's considered something as part of their terms of service that would fall under a sexual category. So to me, I think there's still a lot of confusion, which is surprising to me with big platforms such as Twitter and Google that it would exist about kind of where at-home STD testing really would fall. It's not a sexual service, it is a health service. And the fact that it deals with an intimate part of our health is not something that we feel should be in any way preventing people from learning about it and taking better care of their health. But again, it's just part of that revolution of perceptions that we've taken upon ourselves to do here in the US. And, seeing the successes month after month and year after year, it's really given us the encouragement to keep going. And I personally, going back to kind of my desire to dedicate my life to a meaningful cause, it's really made me feel that what I'm doing, and I can speak as well for my co-founder, that what we've both created ultimately has a bigger purpose and we are making a real difference.
Sure. No, I love that. And why I asked the question is I guess what the point I was trying to get you to mention, and you did mention it, is you had all this pushback because you're doing something that's, different, right? And new, and people aren't used to it because it's not everywhere. And I think the fact that you basically proved the naysayers wrong, and it took a while and it was a bit of a struggle. And in some cases, you're probably still dealing with some naysayers here and there. But like the fact that you guys are basically doing this and you've been following your mission and you don't really care about the naysayers and you're trying to educate people about this stuff, I think is fantastic, right? And I think more people need to build startups that push people out of their comfort zone and actually make a real difference.
Absolutely. We've faced that opposition head on. I actually tend to think very positively. When I get a no, to me, that means I'm that much closer to a yes. Sure. I find that people who push back on an idea or who express concerns or challenges, ultimately they help me and the team get better at articulating the reasons why they shouldn't be afraid or they shouldn't be concerned and they shouldn't be hesitant to embrace a solution like this. The naysayers taught us ultimately how to build the service, because it was to a degree, kind of their questions and their concerns or hesitations that made us really look into additional areas of growth, that made us look into, okay, well, if people are concerned about what happens to treatment options, how do we integrate treatment into the service? So if anything, instead of being discouraged by the naysayers, very early on, I decided that I'm personally and the team would use their feedback as a way to get better and to answer questions before they even come up. Because I think, to me, what a naysayer means is that I, as a marketer or as a customer-facing service, we have not done a good enough job in explaining our value proposition.
Interesting.
And the less no's we get, the more it tells me that we're actually doing a better job at doing that, educating faster and better. So they're a good barometer. I mean, I as an entrepreneur, I would say embrace the naysayers by all means and thank them for their feedback, because they will make your business better.
That's actually really good advice. I don't know how to, say that better myself, really. Like that's great advice for people though, right? I think a lot of people cower when they, hear negative feedback, but when you can use it to turn it into a positive or adjust your kind of messaging or marketing to, so that you don't hear that kind of negativity again, I think you turn it into a success, right?
I agree, absolutely, 100%.
So we're kind of coming to the end of the show, so maybe let's close the show with mentioning where people can get more information about you guys and any other social media links you want to mention.
To learn more about myLAB Box and to take advantage of the first nationwide at-home STD testing service, go to www.mylabbox.com. That is 2 B's, myLAB and box. And you can take your pick from many of our selections. You can do any of our tests a la carte, or you can get a combination box, such as our Safe Box or Uber Box, that allows you to test for the most common infections. Once you order your kit, expect it to arrive at your door in about a couple of days' time. And it will take you about 5 minutes to complete your test and mail it back to us. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram at myLAB Box, as well as follow our YouTube channel for any kind of tips and unboxings of our products. We look forward to seeing you and helping you lead a better, safer, and sexier life.
Perfect. Well, Lora, I really appreciate you taking the time of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, Kevin.
Perfect. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Okay, bye. Thanks for listening. The music for the show is done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.